G'day and welcome to Does It Matter? What is your story? What is the narrative you tell yourself? And by extension, everyone else. What do you say about yourself to yourself? And in turn, what do you say to others? What is the story of your life? I listen a lot because people fascinate me and because I'm a person too and prone to all the same things as everyone else. It fascinates me how narrative orientated we are. We weave our life into narratives, both fictional and reality based, but nonetheless they are narratives, they are stories, heroes, villains, the whole lot, neutral protagonists, less neutral intimates, the whole lot. And often those narratives don't really resemble the actual dynamic that's occurring. So it's kind of important to know what your story is. And in my own explorations, it seems that the only way that you can work out your own narrative, a therapist is helpful. If they're a decent therapist, there's a lot of numpties out there, there really are, so be careful. Be selective. But, a willingness to go down the rabbit hole and to look at that which is uncomfortable and challenging, and to consider that which you would rather eat ground glass than consider. But nonetheless to do so, to have that mental discipline and fortitude to do so. If you can do that and you can trace back the story of your life, the narratives, the common phrases, and you can do that by looking at the things you say to yourself reflexively, the things that you say quickly without thought, the things that pop up in your head under stress, you will discover some of the primary narratives in your life and how they're hamstringing you and almost certainly harming, even destroying your relationships, destroying your capacity to function outside of a certain narrow range of parameters. If you want to be more resilient, more open, more, full stop, then the only way that you're going to get there is by being willing to explore your error, explore your narrowness, explore your unwillingness to grow. Evolution is painful. One of the things that I have found over and over again is that there is no growth without pain. There is no evolution without ego death. And it is the thing that seems to be universal to both men and women in that respect, that we fear it terribly, and yet its presence writing our narratives for us, often incorrectly and inaccurately, and confining us to very narrow ways of living and very rigid ways of living, closeting our hearts and our minds in straitjackets. Don't want that. It's worth suffering now to avoid the much greater suffering that comes down the track. So be prepared to go down the rabbit hole. Look at your internal speech. Look at the phrases that pop up in your head, especially under stress. Look at those things and consider what you are telling yourself. Consider what you are saying to yourself, and consider where that came from. Relationship to your previous relationships, your childhood, your relationship with your parents, and the beliefs that have evolved from then and then throughout your life. Every time there's been some form of trauma, you've formed beliefs about that trauma, and much of the time those beliefs have not been carefully examined, if at all. Most people try to get past their trauma as fast as they can. That's not always a bad thing. I'm not saying it is. You want to get over trauma as quickly as you can, you do, if that's possible and healthy. If it's not, sometimes it's going to be a bit of a process. Either way, if you want to heal properly, you want to process the experience to your maximal benefit and the benefit of everyone around you as well, then you might need to tuck your napkin in, sit down to a bigger meal, whether you like it or not. Go down the rabbit hole. Look at your internal speech. Look at your dialogue. Look at the story you tell about yourself. It's really important. Ask yourself, what is my story? What is the story I'm telling myself about me and others? The reality is that you will act it out and eventually come to believe it, and that in turn will reinforce and solidify the ways in which you regard yourself. It will delineate your limitations. It will be orthogonal to every part of you that develops or doesn't develop. I have watched people with incredible potential stay the same for long periods of time. I've watched other people with equally great potential just wander into the boonies. Either one is not good, and that's usually a failure of the internal narrative. It's a failure of their recognition of what they were doing to themselves. Because at the end of the day, you can't really control what other people do, though you can influence it to some degree. But you can almost completely control what you do, how you think, and eventually, in time, how you feel and how you process things. You can make choices as to what you will suffer and what you will not suffer simply by nature of the way that you have conducted your own narrative, consciously and aware, bringing the unconscious to the conscious. That's what we're trying to do. Go down that rabbit hole, that Jungian rabbit hole, and make the dark, illuminate the dark, and make the unknown known. Let's do that. We can do better. Oos.